You ever wake up thinking it's just gonna be another boring Tuesday? Maybe hit snooze, maybe finish the coffee before it gets cold. And then, 15 minutes later, you're standing on your porch in a bathrobe, watching a woman in kitten heels scream about divine compensation in your driveway, demanding the keys to your government-issued SUV. Yeah, that actually happened to me. And if you're thinking, no way, that sounds like a bad sitcom. Trust me, I wish it was. See, the woman out there waving a clipboard like she was about to launch an intergalactic mission. That was Amy Monroe, HOA president, armed with a binder thicker than a phone book, and the kind of certainty only found in televangelists and toddlers. I still had pillow lines on my face, coffee sloshing in my mug, but Amy? She was dialed in, marching up to my ride like the Lord himself had left it there for her as a heavenly party favor. "That's Mama's blood debt," she shouted, pointing right at my federal SUV. "God sent it to me. You need to hand over the keys, now." Let me back up a sec. To most people around here, I'm just a contractor, keeps to himself, pays his dues, waves at the mailman, all that. But underneath, I was working undercover for the Department of the Interior, digging into a dormant fraud case that somehow, like a zombie in a B movie, kept crawling back up. Amy's mother, Patricia Monroe, was the reason I was here. She'd siphoned off 200 grand from federal accounts and faked her own death so badly, the Social Security office actually laughed when we ran the paperwork. No death records, no payouts, nothing but a cold trail and a lot of suspicious questions. But Amy, for all her quirks, wasn't just some delusional griever. She had a binder full of laws she printed herself, homemade seals and everything, and a messianic belief that my SUV was holy restitution. "This is God's will," she kept saying, like she was about to televise an exorcism. And honestly, I almost felt bad for her. Almost. That feeling went right out the window when she whipped out her phone and dialed 911 right there in my driveway, hollering, "He's refusing to surrender the divine compensation vehicle." Now, I've seen my share of scammers, folks who could sell sunscreen in a snowstorm. But Amy truly believed her own story. This wasn't a grift, it was her entire reality. And because the universe loves an audience, my neighbor Tom, former contractor, now a part-time blogger with a taste for conspiracy, was filming from across the street, live streaming every second like he was waiting for Bigfoot to show up. Tom could sniff out a government ride under a tarp, and by the way he was glancing my way, I knew he was piecing it all together. On the other side, Eleanor, retired Fed, 25 years with the department, sharp as a tack, just gave me that knowing nod. The kind only folks who've worked in the trenches recognize. She started inching closer every time Amy got loud, not saying a word, just being that steady backup. You know what I mean? That's how you survive these circus acts. Quiet backup, quick exits. Anyway, it didn't take long for the local law to show. Officer Ryan Patel, new kid, shiny badge, dreams of federal work, showed up and tried to reason with Amy, explaining HOAs can't just seize vehicles like it's some kind of biblical repo. But Amy came back waving her forged paperwork and barking about emergency powers she'd apparently granted herself. I kept my mouth shut, cataloging everything, because this was bigger than a nutty HOA squabble. I was building a file that might finally nail Patricia wherever she was hiding. But then came the twist. Because, of course, there's always a twist. Security cam caught Amy, 3 nights later, dressed like she'd watched too many ninja movies, sneaking up to my SUV with a can of red spray paint. "For you, Mama," she whispered, before scrawling across the hood in crooked letters, "H. President Amy, blood justice." Not subtle, not smart, and definitely not legal. She didn't know I had the whole thing on video, 4 angles, audio clear enough to hear her shaky breath. But what she also didn't know, Tom, ever the internet sleuth, was digging into her mother's death and suddenly stopped posting for a day. Came back with screenshots from Mexico. Patricia Monroe, very much alive. New last name, new face, running a retirement consulting business, website and all. Her memorial was a sham. No death record, no payout, no closure. Tom, for once, didn't know what to do. Expose the lie and shatter Amy? Or let her spiral deeper, maybe wind up in cuffs or worse? He didn't have to choose for long, because by sunrise, Amy was back, now in her mother's old funeral dress, waving her binder, staging her final seizure ceremony. Over 9,000 people were watching Tom's live stream. Yep, the whole country tuning in to see HOA justice, American style. Amy raised a crowbar, shouting, "By the power vested in me and Almighty God, I reclaim this vehicle as holy compensation." I stepped between her and the SUV, reached in my jacket, and finally, 6 months undercover, and this was the moment, flash my badge. Randall Price, Department of the Interior. Amy Monroe, you've been flagged in a federal fraud investigation. You just vandalized federal property live, on camera, for everyone to see. You could hear the chat explode. Thousands of little windows lighting up as Tom streamed Patricia's business website, her smiling face beaming from a beachside resort. Amy looked like she'd seen a ghost, or maybe become one. And then Maria, the quiet HOA treasurer, who never said much, stepped right into the camera frame. "Amy, your mother manipulated me," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "She forged my signature and stole $15,000 from the HOA emergency fund. I never told anyone until now." Amy just sat down in the driveway, still in the funeral dress, binder in her lap, staring at a laptop screen showing her mother alive and well, sipping a margarita in Mexico. She just kept whispering, "I touched her casket." And you know what? For a second, it almost made you want to feel sorry for her. But Officer Patel was steady, Miranda writes, evidence bag, the whole drill. Amy was charged with federal property destruction, impersonating a federal agent, and fraud. Her meltdown became a federal case study on HOA harassment and psychological manipulation. 18 months went by. Amy served time. Patricia was picked up in Mexico, caught giving a seminar on leaving your past behind. You can't make this stuff up. The restitution paid for a memorial garden, right where Amy used to tape her bogus HOA decrees. My SUV? New plates. Community Protection Unit. Tom's blog. Full nonprofit. Maria? She does accountability workshops now. Eleanor? Runs protection trainings for federal employees. Me? I still drink coffee on that porch. But the air's lighter, the morning's quieter, at least until last week, when I got a call about another HOA president claiming God wanted his neighbor's F-150. Guess some lessons never stick. But here's the part where I want to hear from you. What would you do if someone claimed divine rights to your car? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Share your own wild HOA stories. And if this hit home, smash that like. I read every single comment, so don't hold back. Let me tell you, I didn't even get a week to enjoy that new calm. Because 3 days after my porch confession to you all, I get another call. This time, it's Eleanor, not just my neighbor, but one of those people who can make any room go silent with just a glance. She says, "Randall, you need to see what's going on at the South Gate. Right now." So, still half awake, I head down there, expecting, well, I don't even know what I was expecting. Certainly not what I found. Picture this, a brand new Mercedes, pearly white, still shining from the dealership wax, parked just inside the main entrance. And standing in front of it, arms crossed, expression like she's channeling Judge Judy on a bad day, was Brenda Owens. If Amy was all fire and chaos, Brenda was cold steel, the kind of HOA president who quoted bylaws like Bible verses and wore her authority like a sheriff's badge. Her phone was out, camera rolling, and a small crowd of neighbors had gathered, whispering, watching, and, of course, filming, because nobody wants to miss a scandal these days. The owner of the Mercedes? Well, that was Malik Jefferson. He'd moved in maybe 2 months ago, a young guy, worked remote, quiet, drove that Mercedes like it was made of glass. He's standing there with his arms out, palms up, trying to explain something. But Brenda isn't having any of it. This vehicle is in violation of Article 6, Section 12, prohibiting overnight parking within 20 feet of the gate. She's saying, voice icy enough to freeze sunlight. I'm seizing it as per emergency community powers. Now, by this point, you'd think my neighborhood had learned something about presidents and emergency powers, but apparently, memory's short when there's a shiny car involved. Malik, bless him, tries to stay polite. "Ma'am, I parked here because my garage code stopped working. I filed a maintenance ticket last night. The tow truck's already on the way. But Brenda waves him off like he's a mosquito. That's not my concern. Ignorance of the bylaws is not an excuse. I could feel the tension. The air was so thick you could chew it. Tom, true to form, was already live-streaming from behind a bush, narrating like it was some kind of reality show spinoff. Will the HOA win again, folks? Or will justice finally park itself in this neighborhood? Sometimes I think Tom missed his calling as a stand-up comic. Now here's where it gets wild. Brenda signals to a private tow truck, already waiting by the curb, engine idling. She'd called them before sunrise, probably rehearsed her lines in the mirror. The tow guy's big, neck like a tree trunk, sunglasses on even though it's barely dawn. He starts hooking the Mercedes up, and Malik's just standing there, helpless, watching this guy basically steal his car with HOA approval. I could see his hands shaking, but he didn't yell, didn't threaten, just pulled out his phone and started recording too. Eleanor sidles up next to me. "This is going too far," she mutters, low and urgent. Brenda forged a new bylaw last week. Never even voted on it. She's been targeting new residents ever since Amy went down. The crowd's starting to murmur. Some folks supporting Brenda, others just uncomfortable, eyes darting, like everyone's afraid of being next. That's when Maria? Yeah, same Maria from last time, walks up with a folder. This woman, I swear, has more backbone than half the city council. "Brenda," she says, clear as day, "you do not have the authority to seize personal property. You altered the minutes from last month's HOA meeting." Brenda scoffs. "I am the acting president. My word is law until the next election." Maria just shakes her head. "That's not how any of this works. And you know it." Tom turns the camera on me, waiting for my reaction. For a second, I just wanted to disappear. This was supposed to be over. But I can't help myself. I step forward and say, "Brenda, you realize this is bordering on criminal. That car is private property. If you continue, you could be liable for grand theft, not to mention civil harassment." She tries to laugh it off, calls me just a contractor. But the crowd isn't laughing anymore, and that's when the twist hit. Bigger than any I'd seen before. The tow guy, still fiddling with the chains, suddenly stops, walks over to Malik, and quietly says, "You want this car to stay here? Show me the maintenance ticket." Malik pulls up his phone, shows the email chain from property management, complete with timestamps, requests, and even Brenda's own digital signature approving the emergency garage repair. Tow guy nods, shrugs, then unhooks the car without another word. Brenda turns a shade of purple I've only ever seen in cartoons, but it wasn't over. Malik, still calm, looks Brenda in the eye and says, "I recorded everything. If my car gets touched again, I'm filing a police report. And I'm calling my lawyer." The crowd, sensing blood, starts to cheer. Not loud, not rowdy, but enough to make Brenda finally back down. She storms off, phone still recording, probably already drafting a 20-paragraph Facebook post about community standards. Eleanor pats Malik on the back. Maria takes a few photos for evidence. And Tom, God bless him, ends the stream with a monologue about the dangers of unchecked power and the beauty of good neighbors. I just stand there, sipping my now-cold coffee, thinking about how fast the world spins sometimes. But here's the kicker, the kind that sneaks up on you after the dust settles. That night, Malik stopped by my house with a thank you note and a pie. Said he'd never felt more welcome in a place, even after all that chaos. We sat on the porch, just talking, sharing stories about growing up, about weird neighbors, about how every community's got a little crazy running through its veins. And then Malik said something that stuck with me. "You know, I almost didn't move here because of all the horror stories about HOAs. But I figured, there's got to be good people everywhere, right? Otherwise, what's the point?" We both laughed, but it hit home. Because for every Brenda, every Amy, there's a Maria, an Eleanor, a neighbor who's got your back when the rulebook turns into a weapon. A week later, the HOA had an emergency meeting. Over half the neighborhood showed up, more than I'd ever seen in my life. Brenda got voted out, unanimously. Malik got an apology, Eleanor was named acting president, and Maria volunteered to audit the bylaws so nothing like this could happen again. And me? I still watch from my porch, coffee in hand, heart a little lighter. But I know somewhere out there, another Brenda, another Amy is waiting to take charge of some gate or garden, dreaming up new rules, ready to fight for community standards they barely understand. So now, let me toss it back to you. Ever had a neighbor or an HOA president go full dictator on your block? What did you do? What would you do? Share your stories below. I promise, I'm listening. And if you want to make sure the next Brenda doesn't run your life, smash that like, hit subscribe, and keep those cameras rolling. You never know when you'll be the only thing standing between your neighbor and their next wild idea.